What if I told you that every dollar in your wallet isn't money at all? What if the world's strongest currency, the US dollar, was never backed by gold, silver, or any real wealth, but by pure confidence and fear? Because once upon a time, the United States didn't just change its currency, it changed the entire world's definition of money. This isn't just a story about inflation or economics. This is the story of the greatest financial illusion in human history. And it all started with a single decision made behind closed doors on August 15, 1971. When President Richard Nixon looked into the camera and told the American people something that would quietly reshape the global power structure for the next 50 years. He said, "I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." That's what he said. But that temporary suspension has lasted more than half a century, and today the world is still grappling with the consequences. Because on that night, without a single vote in Congress, without any public referendum, the US dollar was untethered from its golden anchor. It became, for all intents and purposes, pure paper. And in doing so, America found a way to make the rest of the planet pay its bills. To understand how this happened, we need to rewind the clock. Back to the 1940s. The world is burning under the flames of the Second World War. As cities fall, empires collapse, and national treasuries are emptied, one country stands largely untouched by the direct devastation, the United States. By the end of the war, America's position was unparalleled. Its factories were running at full capacity, its infrastructure was intact, and it held a staggering 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. Every other major nation, from Britain to France to Japan, was in debt to America. So, in 1944, in a small mountain town called Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, representatives from 44 allied nations gathered. Their mission? To design a new global financial system for the post-war world. And surprise, surprise, the system that emerged placed the US dollar at the very center of the universe. Every country present agreed. Their currency would be pegged to the dollar, and the dollar in turn would be pegged to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. It was a brilliant deal for America. On paper, it looked fair and stable. It promised to prevent the currency wars that had plagued the pre-war era. But in reality, it handed the United States the keys to the global economy. Think about it. If France wanted to increase its gold reserves, it first had to earn dollars through trade. If Britain needed to stabilize its currency, it needed dollars. And the primary source of those dollars was the United States. America had masterfully constructed a system where every nation's economic survival depended on trusting a single, fundamental promise, that one US dollar could always be exchanged for a fixed amount of real, tangible gold. But promises, as we all know, are only as strong as the will to keep them. Fast forward to the 1960s. America is undergoing massive changes. The Vietnam War is raging, costing billions. At home, President Johnson's Great Society social programs are expanding dramatically. To pay for all of it, the guns, the bombs, and the domestic promises, the American government started printing money like there was no tomorrow. The problem was, there wasn't enough gold in the vaults at Fort Knox to back all this new cash. For every 35 bill flowing out into the world, there wasn't always an ounce of gold to back it up. And other countries started noticing. They saw the US running huge deficits and flooding the world with paper dollars, and they grew nervous. France, led by the fiercely independent President Charles de Gaulle, decided to call America's bluff. De Gaulle famously criticized the US for its exorbitant privilege of being able to print the world's reserve currency at will. He didn't just talk, he acted. He sent French warships to New York Harbor with a clear demand. Exchange our stacks of US dollars for your gold, as promised. Soon, other countries followed suit. A trickle of gold leaving the US turned into a torrent. Billions of dollars were being repatriated, and gold reserves were draining at an alarming rate. By the summer of 1971, the situation was critical. The American Treasury was hemorrhaging the very metal that gave its currency its global credibility. The promise of Bretton Woods was on the verge of shattering. That's when Nixon made his fateful move. On that Sunday evening in August, he went on national television and, in a single address, severed the dollar-to-gold link. He unilaterally declared the end of the Bretton Woods system. He told the world that the gold window was closed. From that moment on, the U.S. dollar was backed by nothing tangible. No gold, no silver. It became what's known as a fiat currency, backed only by the full faith and credit of the United States government. In other words, it was backed by a promise, a powerful military, and the world's collective belief that it was still valuable. You would expect the dollar to collapse. You would expect chaos as the world's reserve currency was revealed to be floating on nothing but air. But that's not what happened. And this is where the true genius and the darkness of the plan reveals itself. Instead of collapsing, America turned this apparent weakness into an instrument of global domination. How? By ensuring every country still needed dollars, even when they were no longer redeemable for gold. The foundation for this had already been laid. Through a series of geopolitical maneuvers, most notably with Saudi Arabia, the U.S. had secured an agreement that oil, the lifeblood of the industrial world, would be priced and sold exclusively in U.S. dollars. This was the birth of the Petrodollar system. So, if Germany or Japan needed to buy oil to power their economies, they first had to acquire U.S. dollars. This created a permanent artificial demand for American currency. The U.S. also controlled the world's key financial infrastructure, like the SWIFT payment system, giving it immense leverage. So, while the gold was gone, the need for the dollar remained. The illusion of power and stability was maintained, and that illusion became the very foundation of the modern American empire, allowing it to run massive trade deficits and finance its spending by simply printing more money, a privilege no other country on earth possesses. The temporary suspension of 1971 became a permanent reality, changing the nature of money and power for generations to come. When gold vanished, the dollar should have died with it, but instead, it evolved. It transformed. You see, America's true genius wasn't just in its ability to create money from thin air, it was in creating a global demand for that money. And to do that, they needed something everyone on the planet relied on. Oil, black gold, the very lifeblood of modern civilization. Picture this. It's the early 1970s. The world economy is in a tailspin. Inflation is soaring, currencies are unstable, and every nation is scrambling for a new standard now that gold is off the table. Then, in 1973, the energy crisis strikes. Oil supplies tighten, prices skyrocket, and a powerful truth becomes crystal clear. Whoever controls the currency of oil controls the flow of global trade. In this chaos, quiet alliances were being forged. Deals were being made, linking the world's most crucial resource, energy, to the U.S. dollar. These agreements would reshape global economics and define the next half-century. The idea was revolutionary in its simplicity. Oil-producing nations would agree to trade their oil primarily in U.S. dollars. In return, they'd get economic stability, security, and access to international investment. This single shift transformed global finance forever. Suddenly, if Japan wanted to buy oil, it needed dollars. If Germany needed oil, it had to get dollars. If India, Brazil, or any other nation wanted to power their economy, they needed U.S. dollars first. And just like that, the petrodollar system was born. A new world order that replaced gold with energy and trust with absolute necessity. From this moment on, the United States didn't need to produce as much as it once did. All it had to do was print. While other countries had to work hard, exporting goods and services to earn their dollars, the U.S. could simply create them at will. It was the ultimate act of modern financial engineering, turning paper into power and debt into dominance. This incredible advantage allowed America to sustain massive government spending, fund global investments, and maintain its vast defense commitments, all powered by the world's unending demand for its currency. The arrangement was set. The rest of the world sent America real goods, tangible resources, and precious oil. In return, America sent back digital dollars, created with a keystroke. By the 1980s, the petrodollar system was in full swing. Global finance exploded, Wall Street boomed, and for the average American, credit became a new way of life. The American dream itself began to shift, from one built on production and saving to one built on borrowing and spending. Credit cards, mortgages, car loans, money was flowing faster and more freely than ever before. Around the world, powerful financial institutions like the IMF and the World Bank helped reinforce this system. They managed global stability through dollar-based lending. When a country faced economic trouble, it could borrow dollars to stay afloat. But those loans came with strings attached, economic conditions designed to open up their markets and integrate them further into the dollar-centric world. But this often created a cycle of dependence, as these nations needed to borrow even more dollars just to repay their old debts. The petrodollar had quietly but firmly become the foundation of the entire global financial system. Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Reserve discovered its ultimate power, the ability to control global liquidity by adjusting interest rates. When the Fed raised rates, dollars became more scarce and global markets would slow down. When it lowered rates, money would flood the system and economies would expand. The dollar was no longer just a currency. It had become a global lever, a single tool that could move entire markets and shape the destiny of nations with one decision. And every time a crisis hit, whether it was in the 1990s, the dot-com bust of 2000, or the financial meltdown of 2008, the answer was always the same: print more, borrow more, stimulate more. While the rest of the world worked to earn its wealth, the American system thrived on confidence and credit. Its government ran record-breaking deficits. Its consumers lived on easy money. And its financial markets became the undeniable heartbeat of the global economy. By the early 2000s, U.S. government debt had ironically become the world's safest asset, the bedrock on which everything else was built. If the dollar moved, the entire world moved with it. This wasn't just control, it was a deep, complex interdependence. But here, as the crucial thing about any system built on confidence, it needs constant momentum to stay alive. More credit, more growth, more demand. For decades, the petrodollar system delivered that momentum. Oil was traded in dollars, central banks held their reserves in dollars, and global finance kept revolving around that single powerful core. Yet now, the ground is beginning to shift.
We're seeing nations experiment with digital currencies, from new religion trade blocks and blocks, and build alternative payment systems to bypass the dollar. The dollar still dominates today, but its share of global reserves is slowly but steadily declining. The financial world is turning to page, entering a brand new chapter, because here's the ultimate truth: the U.S. didn't just replace gold.
It invented an entirely new kind of wealth, one based on trust, energy, and relentless global demand. It built a world where a nation's currency became its influence, where confidence replaced collateral, and where every economic boom was powered by a collective belief in the system itself. And now, that belief, that great illusion of wealth, is being tested once again. The story of money is far from over. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey through modern finance as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the systems that shape our world. We'll see you in the next one.